What's going on, everybody? And happy Maction week to you and yours. It was exactly what we want Maction to be. A quarterback who's projected to be the starter the entire week, the entire time off, and then, all of a sudden he just doesn't play. Thanks, Kent State, and thanks, Kenny Burns. Welcome to the College Football Show at SHIPIT Nation. My name's Bill. Put $1 in front of it. You'll find me on Twitter and Discord. And yeah, you may have noticed I shaved. I was Mario for Halloween. So then I got the mustache and had to go clean. Yeah, that rhymed. Big whoop. Want to fight about it? A little Family Guy reference there to start off the show. It's always fun. But in case this is your first time here, go ahead and click that subscribe right below. If it says you're subscribed already, then great. But if not, click to subscribe. We're pushing for 10,000 subscribers. We're getting pretty close. But we do have something big planned for once we do get to 10,000. So you're going to want to be part of that celebration and party. But we're just going to jump right into the slate. If you're playing DraftKings this week, they have the big $20 again. It's 25% to first and then a big drop off. The $6 150 max actually isn't structured too bad. It's 1/6 to first, so it's still not quite what we're looking for. But 10th place is 1/25 of that. So it's better, not great, but better than the big $20. And then obviously the 20 maxes and the single entries and my favorite, the cash contests. Always have that good payout structure, but we're just going to jump right in with a big SEC matchup. And big, I mean spread. By big, I mean spread, because Florida's really bad. And honestly, who's going to play? Trey Wilson is out. Trayon Webb's out for the season. Khalil Jackson's out. Montrell Johnson, DJ Lagway, and Elijah Badger are all questionable. If we had to lean one way, we'd probably say that Lagway, Johnson, and Badger play, which Lagway's kind of surprising. I was a little bit surprised by that, but it seems like he's been doing all right. He did practice, and he's from Texas. So that has something to do with it. But honestly, who are you going to play on this side? Honestly, if you are going to stack Texas and want to run it back with somebody, Aiden Mizell might be the guy because of how cheap he is. He found the box last week, and he is going to be involved. So you do have that. Texas, Quinn Ewers, the running backs, Trey Wisner, and Jaden Blue are still kind of splitting. But I'll be the first to tell you, maybe I don't even need to tell you, if one of them has a turnover or a fumble or drops a ball, like anything, it just might be the other guy the rest of the game. Wisner has been the guy recently. You'd think that Wisner be the ground guy, Blue may be the pass game, but Wisner's had 14 targets over the last 2 games too, and he's gotten more work on the ground, and you get a $400 discount. So if I were to play one of those guys, I'd probably lean Wisner over Blue. You're going to probably want a piece of this offense with a 35-point team total. And a good matchup. And then in the wide receiver core, Isaiah Bond is probable. Good chance he's back. We'll have to wait and see for sure. But it's a good sign that he's listed as probable on the injury report. Ryan Wingo and Gunnar Helm have been doing great. Helm has had 18 targets and Wingo 16 over the last 3 games. Wingo's the big freshman recruit. And look at their price tags. 3,200 is tough to beat for receivers that are going to get that kind of action. And DeAndre Moore is one guy that I'm kind of looking at a little bit. He's been getting the routes recently, and he broke out with 8 targets last game. My theory is that Quinn Ewers can't throw the forward pass. His average depth of target is only 5.9 yards. And with DeAndre Moore playing in the slot, he runs those routes that are a little bit shorter, the hitches and crossers that are closer to where the quarterback starts. So they're just easier throws for Quinn Ewers to make. All that to say, if you want to play an $8,500 Quinn Ewers and get your 19 points, be my guest. But DeAndre Moore, not a terrible option at $4,100, but why? You get a $900 discount on those other guys, and especially now Jonte Cook is off the team. He was removed from the team, so it's more for everybody else. But like I said, Mizell might be the run back if you do want to stack it, but you're really just looking at the Texas side here. Moving on to West Virginia at Cincinnati, close game, fairly decent total. So there's probably some stuff we want to look at here. The biggest thing is Garrett Green. The coach said that there's a chance he plays, but he's most likely doubtful for this game. We've heard that before. Actually, I think just this week, there was it the running back, Anthony Tyus for Ohio, was doubtful at best, like 4 days before the game, and then he ended up playing and having a stellar game. So watch for news when we get to Saturday. But if he plays, he's in a great spot at 7,000. Nico Markio, I don't know. He's a backup quarterback. I haven't taken time to learn how to pronounce his name. But what I do know is that he's mobile, but not like Garrett Green mobile. So you're getting a little bit of a nerf on, opportunity or ceiling and opportunity without Green, but 6,800 ain't the worst price in the world. This running back room, Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson, basically a split. So, I don't really know what I want to do with them. They're cheap. I've been paying up a lot more at running back, and it's worked out pretty well. So that's what's kind of keeping me away from them, but I don't mind it because of their price tag. And obviously CJ Donaldson at 4,100 is just a surprise to see after, what he's done in years past. And then this wide receiver room is kind of the same as it's always been. Hudson Clement, Traylon Ray, Cole Taylor, all getting target share. They're all cheap, but especially if a backup quarterback comes in, who knows? And then Jaden Bray is not expected back. He's probably not going to come back until the Baylor UCF game. So that does kind of condense the target share a little bit. I don't know. Like, it seems like I want to play more from West Virginia, especially because Cincy gives up almost 5 yards a carry. And that's even skewed from when they played Miami of Ohio and they didn't run the ball. But it's just tough. It's spread out so much. On the Cincinnati side, we know a little bit more where it's going. Corey Kiner is still getting workhorse numbers in the backfield. Evan Pryor gets a little bit, but it's the Kiner show. Xavier Henderson is still wide receiver 1. He did have 6 targets last week and only 1 catch, so that's a little bit concerning. But, Colorado's defense is pretty good. Tony Johnson is the guy that I'm kind of looking at a little bit more. He caught my eye. He's 3,600. And his targets, he's been coming on strong. Just the last 4 games, he has 31 targets, and he's not priced like it. So at 3,600, that's a guy you're looking at. Joe Royer, tried and true, steady tight end. If you've watched the show before, you know how I feel about tight ends, and I like them a lot. Brendan Sorsby, 7,900. If you like the receiving core of Henderson, Johnson, and Royer, why wouldn't you like Sorsby? 7,900, just an average price for a solid quarterback. It's just a decent matchup, and you can get to West Virginia through the air. In fact, it's probably a little bit easier to get to them through the air than it is on the ground, but definitely a stackable game. It's really a mishmash of how you want to do it. Syracuse at Boston College, another tight game. Decent total. Again, some things we're probably going to want to look at this game. Actually, the most fun part of this game is that Tom Brenneman is on the call, and there's a quarterback named Castellanos on the field. If you don't understand that reference, look it up. You'll get it soon, like as soon as you watch the video, if you don't know the story that I'm talking about. But just a little fun note. On the Syracuse side, LaQuint Allen is a workhorse, and he's going to continue to be a workhorse, it seems like. Will Nixon was already out. Now Willis is out, so who else is? Jaden Hart might get a few looks, but honestly, it probably just means more for Willis. These are some stud wide receivers. Pena, Meeks, Gadsden. Justice Ross Simmons had the big game last week, or the last time they played. It was only 4 targets, though. He just happened to catch all 4 of them, and 2 of them were for touchdowns. Pena and Meeks still had 9 targets each. So, those are still the top 2 options. Gadsden had a down game, but we know what he is. And then Kyle McCord, honestly, he's had less than 20 in his last 2 games, and there's still a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth. And while we're talking about McCord, I do want to take a moment to get a little bit more serious. A couple weeks ago, Kyle McCord played against Pittsburgh and had 5 interceptions. I want to apologize to anybody that I told to play Kyle McCord that day. It wasn't the best decision I've ever made, and if I could go back, I would change it. And Castellanos with a drive to deep left field. But I just want to say that I'm sorry for those who played Kyle McCord against Pittsburgh. But they're not playing Pittsburgh anymore. They're playing Boston College. 9,000 is honestly probably fair, even though he's had a couple of down games. On the Boston College side, a much better price tags. Thomas Castellanos, the aforementioned, 6,600. He's been running the ball more. He's had 30 rushing attempts over his last 2 games, and that's the Castellanos we want. Trayshawn Ward, you wouldn't think that Turbo Richard, being out would affect the running backs 1 and 2, but it did. Trayshawn Ward took advantage. He got the volume. He had a stellar game against Louisville. Yes, he had 1 big reception that kind of helped, but he was also pretty efficient on the ground, and he's out-carried Robichaud for the first time in the last few weeks. So a $4,700 Ward, I don't mind. And Lewis Bond continues to be too cheap. He's still getting the target share. I just got to say, every time I play Bond, it just burns me. And honestly, I probably need Gold Bond after I play Lewis Bond. It's just, it's kind of how it's been working. He gets the targets, he gets the receptions, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he has 6 catches for 15 yards and no touchdowns, which isn't good, but the opportunity's there, which is something we always like. And then the rest of these guys are on the field. Definitely a stackable game, several different ways to do it. A couple more scores could make this the highest scoring game on the slate. Not likely, but possible. Miami at Georgia Tech. Miami 11-point favorites. It's just got to be because Georgia Tech's at home. I think Miami is a much better team. And we still don't know. We don't know if Haynes King is going to play. We'll get to that in a moment. But on the Miami side, Cam Ward he was back to Cam Ward last week. I don't mind paying 10-6 for him. That's just all I'll say about him. He's a stud. He's probably going to win the Heisman, except for the fact that I just mushed him right now. But Cam Ward is a stud play. Damian Martinez and Mark Flesher have been in a split. Basically 50-50. Honestly, both are solid plays. You just get the discount with Fletcher. So I'm not sure what would cause me to click Martinez over Fletcher unless I get some ownership leverage. But that's really the thing, because either one of them could go for 20 points. And that's a decent game for both of them. It's just a ceiling game for Mark Fletcher, with that discount. Xavier Estrepo, still the guy in the slot. One thing I will say is that West Virginia has given up more games, more big games to the outside receivers, Ja'Cory Brooks, Eli Pankel, J.J. Jones. And that's where Horton and George play. And Horton and George both started last game. Sam Brown's relegated to the bench. And then Elijah Arroyo at tight end. The thing with George and Horton is that you're just getting a discount off for Restrepo. Restrepo is probably just going to get the target share, though. So you can really play any of those guys. I like the quarterback, 3 to 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs. Obviously, don't play them all together, but mix and match those guys. I don't mind that at all. And even though they're an underdog, a big underdog, a 26.5-point total isn't nothing for Georgia Tech. It's just a matter of if Haynes King plays. And I don't know that we're going to know for sure. He was named captain, but that doesn't always mean everything. And if Haynes King, whether he does or doesn't play, Jamal Haynes could be in play. At 6,000 is just kind of a weird price. I don't know. The Georgia Tech side. And Rutherford and Singleton, still the top 2 options, still underpriced in my opinion. But it does make a difference if Haynes King or Zach Pyron is starting. I do like them a lot more if Haynes King plays. So there's a lot yet to be determined with this game. Definitely a stackable game, especially if King goes. But that's something we're going to have to wait and see. All right, Minnesota, Rutgers. Minnesota 6-point favorites on the road. I'm still not sure how to handle this, but they're on fire lately. This is like the wife swap of college football, though. Kirk Shiraka, the offensive coordinator for Rutgers, used to be the offensive coordinator at Minnesota. Joe Harasmiak, Rutgers defensive coordinator, used to be a Gophers defensive coach. Corey Heatherman, now the Minnesota defensive coordinator. Rutgers linebacker coach before that. And obviously, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the Greek rifle, former Gopher quarterback. So a lot, just a lot of changing in the guard, between each other. On the Minnesota side, Max Brosmer, 6,000, still cheap enough that, you can give him a look. He continues to play well. And I'm not entirely worried about the coaching on Rutgers knowing Minnesota, because Brosmer has entirely changed this offensive scheme. They never threw the ball like they did now. So they know some of these guys and some of the tendencies, but with Brosmer at the helm, I don't know that it matters a ton as much as it would, say for, the Gophers defensive coordinator knowing Rutgers, because they're still running through Monangai. But anyway, Brosmer's fine. Darius Taylor, offense runs through him. Obviously, he's a workhorse, but he's still second on the team in targets. He's the easy dump off. And that's honestly one of the reasons I like Brosmer too, is because you throw it to Darius Taylor in the flat and he'll get you 20 yards and maybe a touchdown. And then in the wide receiver room, still Daniel Jackson is the guy. But like I said last week, Elijah Spencer's up and coming. Jackson's had double-digit targets in 3 straight, but Spencer had a season high with 8 targets last week. So it's kind of like more of a 1-2 punch rather than Jackson than everybody else. So Jackson and Spencer, I don't mind Spencer in some GPPs, but Jackson is still the number 1 option. On the Rutgers side, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, revenge game. Talked about it a little bit already. Personally, I think that makes him more anxious than it does, vengeful. I don't know that he's a guy that's going to be out for blood necessarily. It seems more like he's just going to, like I said, it could just spark the anxiety a little bit more than it does the fuel to win the game. But 5,300, I don't mind it. Minnesota's pass defense is really good. Rutgers is at home, though, so it's It's tough. Kyle Monangai left the game with a head injury last week. Before that, he still had 18 carries. He's still going to be the workhorse. I would rather attack Minnesota on the ground than through the air for the most part, especially the workhorse running back like Monangai. But if he doesn't go, Antoine Raymond had 15 carries in relief, so they're going to keep that workhorse mentality whether Monangai goes or not. Obviously, a huge discount, a $3,400 running back who's going to get 20 carries. I mean, I'll take that even against a good defense. In the wide receiver core, Demir Miller, 20 targets last week. Now, I know Ian Strong didn't play. I know Kenny Fletcher's out, but Kenny Fletcher's still going to be out because he's out for the season. So 20 targets for a $4,000 wide receiver. And I don't know, if you watched last week, you heard me tell you that Minnesota gives up a good game to one receiver, it seems like, every single week. Last week, it was Pat Bryant on track to do that. He had 5 for 72, and then he got hurt. Oh, Zachary Franklin's just going to take over. He ended up having 5 for 71. So, it's just kind of like they passed the torch. I can't play anymore. So now you have to be the receiver that has a good game. KJ Duff and Ben Black have been coming up lately. They're fine. Again, a tough defensive matchup. And there's just better spots honestly, there's better games on this slate than this one. But I don't mind pieces of Minnesota and Rutgers here and there. A game stack, you'd probably be, different if you game stack this game. But I'm just definitely looking at pieces. Darius Taylor's price nice. Daniel Jackson's too cheap. Demir Miller's probably too cheap. Monangai's too cheap if he goes in all likelihood. But definitely some news that we're going to want to watch there. Purdue at Ohio State. I don't even need to talk about Purdue. Hudson Card's going to start, but Brown's going to get snaps. Max Clary is fine. Ohio State has given a little bit to tight ends, but that's about all I can say. CJ Smith is interesting. He's a Georgia transfer, made a season debut last week and had 7 targets for $3,500. If you want to get real gross, coming from Georgia, he's seen the big stage firsthand, unlike anybody else on this Purdue team. But otherwise, you're just looking at Ohio State. Will Howard's price is fair. Judkins and Henderson, I don't know. I mean, the upside's there, but they've been less than impressive. They eat into each other so much. And then Jeremiah Smith finally didn't score a touchdown last week. I mean, I guess there's that. Ibuka's still solid. Tate's still solid. Ennis even got in on the action. Kakmarek isn't going to play, so Guy Scott. So you're really just looking at the Ohio State side here. Army in North Texas. Obviously, the big news is Bryson Daly. Is he going to play? Is he not? I think the spread was actually at 6 just a couple of days ago. So it's starting to lead me to believe Daly's not going to go. And honestly, when you're watching this video, I mean, maybe it's already happened. But we'll see. If Daly doesn't go, I mean, Daly's a stud option. North Texas defense isn't scary. And look at this total. You want pieces of this game. If Daly doesn't go, you're going Udo. I mean, they didn't hardly raise his price at all. And he was a stud last week. He's going to get all of the touches if Daly can't go. Wide receiver is always the same for Army. Maybe you'll luck into a touchdown, but that's about it. Chandler Morris, $9,400. Not too expensive for me. This running back room is kind of a stay away for me. Sibley, McGill, Porter all saw time last game against Tulane, and they just didn't really impress me. But who did impress me was Damon Ward. He came back and just had 32 DK points. He picked up right where he left off. It kind of nerfed Conwright and Carnes a little bit, but Carnes still had a solid game too, like 7 targets or something like that. Sheffield's wide receiver 1 probably still, but you're just getting such a big discount with Ward. And honestly, if North Texas goes under owned because of this pricing again, I'm all over him. But yeah, big news if Bryson Daly plays. If Daly plays and you can do Daly, Morris, and one of his receivers, that's just, there's so many points that could be had in this game, and we pretty much know where the usage is going to go. Georgia at Ole Miss. Georgia's 2.5-point favorite on the road. Carson Beck, 7,500. Again, fair. I think you can get to Ole Miss. If you're Georgia has a good enough offense to do it. Ole Miss has had a few easy matchups. It's kind of made their defense look great. They still have a good defense, but 7,500 is fair. Trevor Etienne left the last game, and Nate Frazier looked good, but it sounds like Etienne's going to play. He like I said, he had a non-contact jersey at practice, but I think he's going to play. The Robinsons are both still out. Dominic Lovett, target leader on the team, 10 targets in 2 straight games, still priced like he's wide receiver 3 though. So if I'm going to the wide receiver core, that's probably where I'm going. I don't mind any of those top 3 guys though. On the Ole Miss side, what do we need to talk about? Jackson Dart throwing for 500 yards, Jordan Watkins getting 5 touchdowns. What more can I say? Dart's a solid option even at 9,600. We know the upside's there. The thing is, Henry Parrish is out. Matt Jones is out, or doubtful. I guess Matt Jones is doubtful. Again, Ole Miss put everybody on the injury report. Trey Harris is doubtful. Caden Lee is questionable. Jordan Watkins is questionable, but he was doubtful and he got bumped up to questionable. That's usually the trend we like to see. Caden Prescorn is probable. You could honestly play any of these guys. Ulysses Bentley probably going to get a bulk of the carries, but Rashad Amos is off the injury report now. He's a transfer from Miami of Ohio, who I was kind of excited to see at Ole Miss. He just hasn't had the opportunity, and he's been kind of dinged up. So, it could be the Bentley and Amos show. We could see one guy get 20 carries and the other guy get 3. We don't know. Lane Kiffin has underutilized Bentley, in my opinion. So we'll see if he actually gives him a shot when there's almost nobody else to do it. Caden Lee still got there last week, even with Watkins' big blow-up game. Watkins, we don't even need to talk about. Obviously, the upside is there. Daquan Wright, if Prescorn can't go for whatever reason, Daquan Wright played basically every snap last week. 9 catches on 9 targets for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. Still had 2 touchdowns, even though Jordan Watkins had 5. How about that? So Daquan Wright's, Dart seems to be building a relationship with him, but, if Prescorn goes, that could eat into Wright. But honestly, there's not too much of this wide receiver core that I don't like. Georgia doesn't have the scary defense that they used to, and Ole Miss can put up points. Iowa State coming off their first loss, 3-point favorites at Kansas. Rocco Beck priced up a little bit, but probably not enough. He does have 25, 30-point upside, so I don't mind him at this price still. Higgins and Noel are the studs. The running game, it was Hansen and Sama last week. Sama had the touchdown, but, Hansen, they looked equally efficient. Jackson kind of took the back seat, but it very easily could be Jackson this week. I would guess it's Hansen first. I don't know. I really don't know what the running back room, but just play Higgins and Noel. Burkle had a decent game with the Brahmer bowl out, Benjamin Brahmer. But it's Higgins and Noel. I don't know how many more ways I can say it. On the Kansas side, Jalen Daniels is, deserving of this price early in the season, but he's kind of had a resurgence, 23 or more on DraftKings in the last 3 games. And, they're at home. Kind of at home. I don't know if this game's at Arrowhead or if it's at whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's a home game for Kansas, and Jalen Daniels 5,800. It's just too cheap for his upside, especially if he's going to be running 58 and 66 yards in the last 2 games. Devin Neal, Highshaw's likely out, and he's going to get a workhorse load. He had his most snaps of the season last week. So 6,700 is not too expensive for him. Just tilt with me when Morrison comes in and vultures a touchdown from him. And then in the past, the receiving core, it's the same old Kansas. Grimm is still the nicest looking option, but nothing pretty about it. But this is easily like a Jalen Daniels, run it back with Higgins and or Noel and Becht, or Devin Neal. You could stack quarterback, running back here and quarterback wide receiver here if you wanted to do a full-on game stack. Even with this low total, the usage is just so condensed to those guys that it is more of a possible play if you want to go that route. Clemson at Virginia Tech, 6.5-point favorites on the road for Clemson. I think they're probably ready to just beat the brakes off of somebody. They did not look good. Clemson didn't look great. So on the Clemson side, we're looking at Klubnik. He's definitely not too expensive. 9,300. We know he could go for 30 easy. Maffa, 30 carries last week against Louisville, even in a losing effort. 30 carries for somebody who's 6,500 is usually a first click. I love Maffa this week. The wide receiving core is a little bit more interesting now because Brian Wesco is back and he had 12 targets last game and he's 3,100. And another freshman on the rise. We already talked about Wingo. Bryant Wesco is kind of in that same boat. Even with Wesco returning, TJ Moore still had 8 targets last week. Antonio Williams probably still wide receiver 1. Wesco could take that over. If we see the same consistent target share that we saw last week over the next game or two. And then Brenningstone's a tight end, so he's just always going to be on the field. You could go a lot of different routes with these guys. It may just come down to what you can afford. With Wesco and Moore, you're getting a big discount, but Antonio Williams just underpriced. Maffa's underpriced. Makes it a lot easier to stack with a $9,300 Klubnik. And then on the Virginia Tech side, we know where the usage is going. Drones is underpriced, maybe the cheapest he's been all season. Tootin is not too expensive. They were both out last week, but they should be fine. They're probable to play. And then with Jones, I mean, I don't love the wide receivers at Virginia Tech, but with Jones in, I do think it does help Lane and Felton a little bit more. And the Gosnell boys are on the field. So, again, a stackable game, even with a low total, because on Virginia Tech, we know where the usage is going to go. And the Clemson side, they're probably going to put up 30 points. Michigan at Indiana. I might hate myself for saying this, but Davis Warren didn't look bad against Oregon. Didn't mind it, Bob. At 4,800, and if you look at the DK box score, look at his DK points. 4,800, he would have hit 3x last week if he was 4,800. Unfortunately, he was 5,100, so he just missed. Everybody's lineups were ruined. But speaking of 4,800, Kalel Mullings, 4,600. Donovan Edwards, 4,000. They had bad games, but they're not bad players. So I like these guys, just their price tags are jumping out to me, especially if Warren is going to throw the ball like he did. And it helps that he has Colston Loveland, because Colston Loveland is in play, until he's like 6 to 6,500. He's going to get the target share. Loveland's targets the last 4 games, 11, 11, 9, and 8. So, that's what you're looking at on Michigan. On the Indiana side, Curtis Rourke is back, and he just had a blow-up game against Michigan State. So 7,400, probably too cheap for him. Justice Ellison came down to earth after his 29 carry game, but he still had the most carries on the team with 9. Surratt got 7 targets, 2 touchdowns in Rourke's return. Surratt probably the happiest to see Rourke back. Keyshawn Williams had 7 targets last game though too. So after Surratt, it's a little bit more of a crapshoot, but with a 32-point team total, you're going to want some pieces of this in all likelihood in your player pool. At least give them a look anyway. And then the final game on the slate, maybe the juiciest of them all, if Bryson Daly, especially if Bryson Daly doesn't play. Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado's 4-point favorite on the road. And we have Shedeur Sanders for sub 9K for maybe the first time this year on a Colorado team who is absolutely cruising right now and has a path to the Big 12 championship in their second year of the Sanders regime. I don't know what else I need to say. Shedeur, we know what they're going to do. And last week they were super efficient throwing the ball. Travis Hunter, 9 catches on 9 targets. LeJontay Wester, 5 catches on 5 targets. Jimmy Horn, 5 catches on 6 targets. This passing game is exploding. And, Travis Hunter, usually a 10K wide receiver, now at 9,500. Here's the thing too. Colorado ran the ball a ton last week. Isaiah Augustov had 22 carries, and he's 3,900. When's the last time you wanted to play a running back for Colorado? Even Dallin Hayden had 10 carries. So this offense is they're crushing right now. So you're going to want pieces of this. The Sanders Hunter stack is, like I said, the cheapest it's been. And Texas Tech, man, pass defense. 299 and 2 to Iowa State, 344 and 3 to TCU, 274 and 5 to Baylor, 506 and 3 to Abilene Christian. You can get to Texas Tech through the air. So, loving this Colorado side quite a bit. On the Texas Tech side, Baron Morton's too cheap. I'm sorry. Colorado's defense, a lot better. Texas Tech is at home. Lubbock's a tough place to play. Red Raiders always play well in Lubbock. Almost always play well in Lubbock. Nothing's 100% or 0%. But Baron Morton, 6,000. I don't mind that at all. It makes a lot work in your lineup. Taj Brooks, even with a tough opponent last week, had 25 carries, so 8,400. It's fair. Taj Brooks is going to get some looks from me. And then Josh Kelly, 18 targets last week. So, that's not bad for a $6,000 wide receiver, right? And he's only got 39 over the last 3 games, though. So, come on. Caleb Douglas, 27 targets over the last 3. So definitely slacking, but 4,600. That's why they priced him down, because 9 targets a game is what constitutes a $4,600 wide receiver. That was a lesson in sarcasm. I like these guys. Kelly and Douglas are definitely in play. If it was at Colorado, I might feel a little bit differently because Colorado's defense has been better. But no, this is a very, very stackable game and a lot more affordable than you would expect it to be, especially the Colorado side. So that's the slate. A lot of good games, a lot of sneaky games. Definitely a couple of targets. The Army game, North Texas, Colorado, Texas Tech. But there's a few other options that could outscore. This is the boring stone. Oh, this is called the stone. I don't even know if I mentioned that at the beginning. This is a college football stone. This is what the stone looks like if you're a SHIPIT Nation member. All the pretty colors. This was a couple of weeks ago. What it has is if guys are marked cash, high upside, just a GPP play. I don't know if you remember the Minnesota-Maryland game, but Brosmer, Taylor, and Jackson all got there. Wish we'd have seen that coming. Oh, we did. But there's so much more information on here that's so super relevant. It's how many targets a game are these guys getting? How many running attempts are they getting? What's the run-pass ratio for each team? What is the pace of each team? The pass defense rating, the rush defense rating. And you still obviously get the implied team totals and the spreads. So there's so much here. And, if you become a SHIPIT Nation member, this is what you get. It's super easy to become a member. You just got to come in here and click one of these buttons and look at the prices. Look across the industry and then look at our prices. We want you to pay for your contest, not your content. So we like to keep our prices lower and make it so that you don't have to chop off your arm to pay for your content. And look at it, like if you do the all access, which is what I recommend, it's only $700 for the entire year. So why wouldn't you? We have NFL, college football, PGA, NBA, NHL, MMA, NASCAR, MLB. Honestly, MMA, there's winners every single weekend. I don't know anything about MMA, but I play using our tools and I'm in the green almost every single weekend. And it's one of the best, MMA strategies and the best content. And it's not just MMA, it's every single sport. But if you don't want to do all access, we have single sports too. You can do football or PGA, and the football does come with NFL and college. So that's awesome. And we have optimizers. If you want to use the optimizer, you can. If you don't have to. And just one more reason, this is just last week alone. This isn't like the entire football season or anything like that. This is just last week. We have winners all across the board at SHIPIT Nation. And all of these people, another thing they have in common is they're all in the Discord. We're a community. We lift each other up. We talk through strategy. We tilt when there's tilting to be had. But the most important thing is that almost everything that's said in the Discord, unless, we're looking for laughs, is just all about bettering our process and educating each other. And that's really what it's about. It's not about who I like as my picks. It's about showing you that this is a route you can take to have success. This is a strategy I would take in this game. We want you to know your process. We want you to home in your process and, educate yourself to become a better DFS player rather than just copying picks and plays. Which leads me into rule number 1, college football is fun. That aforementioned process, enjoy it. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy the sweat. Enjoy watching college football. It's a privilege that we get to do this. So make sure that you enjoy it, and hopefully I'll see you at the top of the leaderboards. But for now, we'll see you next week.